So today I want to talk about the Steam Deck a little bit because I did end up pre-ordering one. Or rather, I guess I pre-ordered the ability to pre-order one because really they were just taking $5 deposits on the 3 models on offer. Now if you're not familiar, the Steam Deck is effectively a handheld gaming PC that basically serves as a Switch Pro, more so than the OLED Switch certainly that we're going to be getting soon. But ultimately today what I wanted to do is talk about some of the reasons that I decided to go ahead and pre-order this device. Now if you're not familiar, the device does come in 3 different varieties. At the low end you've got $399 for a 64 gig version, $529 I think for the 256 gig version, or at the top tier you've got $649 for the 512 gig version. Now that's the one that I went ahead and pre-ordered, and functionally on the inside there's no difference between these 3 units, although the top tier, aside from having more space, also does have an anti-reflective display, which after pre-ordering it I think kind of might be a detriment for me because I do tend to like high gloss displays, but either way, I thought it would be the smarter play to go ahead and get one that has the maximum amount of internal storage available, even though you can upgrade the storage because they all have SD card slots, so you can kind of upgrade the games that are there. I like the idea of just having the maximum amount of the fastest available storage to get to the games that I have. Now, here's the thing though, historically speaking I have definitely been a console gamer more than a PC gamer. Aside from getting really into World of Warcraft in the mid-2000s, I don't do a lot of PC gaming aside from occasionally flirting with it here and there whenever there's a game that just doesn't make its way to console. So why did I decide to go ahead and pre-order what is effectively a gaming PC in a handheld format when almost all of my gaming is done on console? Well, that's why I wanted to talk about today are a few of the different reasons I decided to take the leap, aside from the sheer novelty of making content for YouTube and exploring a new device as an early adopter. And I think one of the biggest reasons is that it looks like it's going to bring some of the best elements of console gaming to PC gaming. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily the fact that, like the graphics are going to be better or anything, but rather it looks like it's going to provide a more frictionless experience, and that's really one of the things that mostly keeps me gaming on my couch instead of at my desk on a gaming PC. I appreciate that I can just jump directly into my games in most cases on consoles, whether that's the PlayStation 5 or the Series X, or to a lesser degree the Nintendo Switch. But the fact that this is going to take all of the PC games that I have built up in my decent Steam library and kind of jump right into them, ostensibly with very little friction between turning the unit on and just jumping right into the gameplay, is a huge draw for me. Because even though PC gaming is demonstrably better when it comes to things like graphical performance, that's not really the biggest thing that got me excited to play the Steam Deck. Rather, it was the idea that a lot of the games that have been locked behind my Steam library and not easily accessible and away from my couch where I could just jump into the action quickly are now going to become accessible because they've kind of started using the Steam OS for this unit. So it looks like that interface is going to lend itself really well to having a quick view of everything in your Steam library and jumping right into the action. Of course, there really wouldn't be much action to dive into if you didn't already have some PC games available, and kind of like I already mentioned, I do have a pretty decent Steam library already of around 200 titles that I built up through the years because, even though I'm a console gamer, I'm not immune to a good deal, and the Steam Summer Sale is notorious at doling out tons of amazing games at super cheap prices. And while there's not a lot that often pulls me to my Steam library and makes me willing to fire up my gaming rig to actually check out those games, there are some exceptions to the rule, and I think one of my favorite things about my Steam library, or really just a lot of the games you can get on Steam period, is that it does kind of fill the gap for some games that aren't available on console in a backward compatibility mode. One of the examples that I can think of off the top of my head would be Max Payne. I had that on the original Xbox, that's where I played it and beat it, but I can't play Max Payne on the Series X because it's not on the backward compatibility list. Now, by all rights, I could fire up my OG Xbox for the privilege, but as much as I like older games, I really like playing older games on newer hardware more than I do dragging out the original system to hook it up to play it. And I'm not the kind of gamer who leaves like 12 systems hooked up all at once. I'm a much bigger fan of systems in the modern age that have backward compatibility built in, or systems like, like the Retron 5 that give you the ability to plug in multiple cartridges without taking up a ton of space in your entertainment center or on your desktop. So yeah, for me it is pretty exciting to think about all the titles that I have in my Steam library that largely go ignored because, well, I just want my gaming and I want it now, and I don't want to wait for it. So I'm hoping that the Steam Deck will kind of fill that gap for me. And then also, aside from just taking some of the console gaming experiences that I've played in previous generations and making them accessible to me once more through the Steam Deck hardware, I'm also kind of excited about the emulation possibilities for the Steam Deck. One of the things that I really love that Valve has done here is they have said that even though it has Steam OS preloaded on it, and that's going to be the primary means by which a lot of people play games, it also lends itself extraordinarily well to tinkering. So if you're the kind of person who used to hack their PlayStation Vita or their PSP, or likes the idea of playing older handheld games from the Game Boy or Game Boy Color on modern hardware, I think this thing is going to be an absolute beast for that. And while I still need to research some of those technical details more, I've heard some people say that you would be able to competently emulate games as late as the Xbox 360 era and it would run pretty well on the Steam Deck. That's kind of exciting. But aside from being able to play games from older generations that haven't quite reached backward compatibility status on platforms like the Xbox, or emulation aside, another reason is it is exciting to think about playing some AAA games that I've played in the last few years in a portable format without having to stream it or do some kind of a workaround to get that experience. The idea of playing Death Stranding or something like Horizon Zero Dawn in portable format sounds awesome, and I bet it's going to look incredible. However, as excited as I am for the Steam Deck, I also do have some hesitations in two distinct arenas. One is their hardware history hasn't been super great. At one point I did buy their streaming box to test it out and see if I could, again, kind of reduce the friction between my Steam library and my couch by, effectively just streaming it from a gaming PC to where I was playing on my, bigger TV in my living room. But that experience was not very good, as I expected it kind of wouldn't be, and those units quickly dropped to something like $5 at your local GameStop. They were, not expensive to procure at that point because they didn't perform very well. But the other hesitation that I have is that it is running Steam OS, which is using basically emulation itself. It's a version of Wine that I believe is called Proton, which is like this abstraction layer, so it's not truly running Windows to run some of these games that are Windows-based, but rather it's running a form of emulation that happens on top of Linux to kind of bring that experience to you. And I'm hoping that works really well. I'm assuming, with their testing, they're saying that, everything they've thrown at it has worked so far, but there is some part of me that is a little bit concerned because even at the low-end model for $399, that's a pretty decent chunk of change to throw down for a gaming experience like this. So I'm really hoping that it's able to deliver and that, the emulation or whatever they're doing technologically to allow a lot of those Windows experiences to run flawlessly on this unit work really well, because if it doesn't, that's going to be a really hard sell for people. But again, to their credit, they said they put this thing through rigorous testing, and I have no doubt that they've taken some of the absolute best or most played games they've gathered from their own internal data on the Steam platform to make sure that some of those best experiences will work flawlessly. But yeah, I guess I won't really know until I get my hands on the unit, which for me should be December or January. For a lot of other people, it'll be later in 2022, but we'll see what happens. But hey, what about you? Do you have any interest in the Steam Deck? If so, what were your justifications for it? Were there any particular draws that got you excited to get your hands on a unit like this? Or did you also have some hesitations about the hardware and software like I do? Let me know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well, especially from somebody who's probably more competent at PC gaming than I am. If you have some more insight into this, please let us know about it in the comments below. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch these videos. I always appreciate it. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time.